come nearer to.
I'll clap on myself.
Well,
There we go. I'm going to go and grab my water. Sorry. My coffee store with it.
can you come sort of a metre nearer without giving away the camera?
Perfect.
It's just to do with the voice, you know. I just want to find, I just want to find a speaking voice that's, you know, doesn't have any extra energy thrown into it. I mean, I want to keep them so we all find balance. And I mean, that's actually a teaching point for you as a teacher. I think it's really important that children are greeted with a voice that helps them feel comfortable. The moment I start raising my voice like this, there is a sort of demand in the room. You can feel that I'm putting on a slight bullying tactic. I'm slightly pushing you, and you may not even notice it because you may be so used to going to primary school and high school where people just talk like this. I've got a friend who's been teaching music in a high school for a long time and came to London to see me because she had all the nodes taken off her throat, and the doctor said, "What do you do?" And she said, "Oh, I'm a high school teacher." And I went, "Oh, of course then." Obviously, naturally, I mean, that's why you fucked up your throat, you know, why it's full of nodes, because, you know, obviously you have to be, but it's not obvious, not to us. You know, we don't try and outdo the adversary in that way. We come to the natural, normal speaking voice of the children and the parents as much as possible, even in a group lesson. I'm really keen on that. Kate's heard it lots of times from me, you know, going into Bryanston, which is summer school, you know, and sometimes there's 100 children there ready for the first play together, and they're all overexcited, and they come with parents and they're all overexcited. You know, okay, everybody, you know, go over there and tune, and it just drives me nuts because it's so inefficient and it's so not teaching. Apart from anything else, if people change their voices to teach, like I might kind of endear myself as, you know, to you in a certain way, so slightly putting you down from my tone of voice, you know, as if I'm a kindergarten teacher and you're all about 4 years old and you're doing really well. You tend not to actually believe me. I mean, people, children, parents, they can easily spot that. It's not that they actually notice the voice. They won't come out and say, "Oh, well, I could tell immediately because, you know, that teacher raised her voice, or he lowered his voice, or they put on a funny accent or something." You know, they don't say that, but they do tend to say it sounds more understandable. It's more as if you're telling the truth. If you're just keep a normal teaching voice. Anyway, it's not at all what I was going to talk about, but I think it's really important.
Yeah.
You said,
and I hate that. Can you do a bow hold? Of course I can do a bow hold.
Well done, Kate!
I can't, then it's your fault, not mine.
It is so common.
Yeah.
It is so incredibly common. As I say, apart from Margaret Atta, who has her throat seen to, it's so common as to be considered normal, you know, unfortunately. And I see it everywhere. Anyway, but in a way, I like making the most of a teaching point, an event that comes, and be spontaneous about it. So that's something you have to do in a group lesson. You know, you can't go into a group lesson with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students and, you know, have a plan. This is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is what... It's not going to work out like that, my friends, you know? And so I've come with a plan, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and it didn't work out like that. I found myself talking to you about tone of voice. So you've got to have in your teaching lessons and group lessons in particular, well, all lessons really, you've got to have just loads of things up your sleeve, you know. Plan, you can announce it at the beginning, that is one thing. So I'm going to announce that we're going to hear a tiny clip of an audio clip of a little boy, 7 years old. It's Michiko Takahashi, if you happen to know the name. She's a renowned violin teacher in London. And it's her brother, her small brother, when he was 7. He's now a mature adult and a parent himself. And they found his old graduation tape, which was done on, you know, little reel, little cassette tapes like that. And then what happens is, in those days, the teacher, this all happened in Japan, sent the graduation tape, which is Gosset Kavot, to Suzuki. And Suzuki spoke for no less than half an hour. It's quite extraordinary. Because when Michiko told me that, I heard a little bit of it, and I thought, oh, that, you know, how wonderful to have Suzuki on your tape, and how lovely. What a lovely idea to do that for my students and so on. But blimey, you want me to talk for half an hour to a 7-year-old? You know, you're going to have to pay me a bit more. Do you know what I mean? Every 7-year-old. So that was, for him, quite normal. I mean, he gave every single 7-year-old the entire Suzuki method, I think. Anyway, Kate, would you like to play it?
Password on there.
He gives his name. He says, sorry, I'm not very good at the end.
Oh.
You're going to go to the end now. So now you're going to hear Suzuki, which I'm assuming we won't understand.
あなたのゴゼックのロボットをとても嬉しく聞かせてもらいました。なかなか勉強家ですね。
Do you want to just turn it down a bit, and I'll tell you, this is a transcript from the whole 30 minutes, so this is not an actual translation, but this is what Michiko came up with it. And maybe we should have it off now. Yeah. This is now Suzuki talking. He says, I listened with great pleasure to your performance of Gosset Gavot. You are a rather hard-working person. You practice well, and I'm so happy to listen, knowing that your performance is going to get better and better. I think it's referenced to that. He said, it's not very good yet. Please study every day from now on to better student, better practice. Not just playing, but if you study the important points with care, you will be playing very good. Good posture, good tone. Please practice for a better tone at home every day. Listen to the recording daily. Even when you can play the piece, please listen to the recording daily. And you can recognize the recording as a fine performance. Listening to the recording will grow your musicality without noticing. That's a very Suzuki thing to say. It will grow. He used to say it'll grow your ability, it'll grow your musicality. It'll grow your tone, Freya. Practice 2 or 3 review pieces daily. That surprised me. I thought he was going to say more, but anyway, this is taken from legitimately from the tape. please play with the accompaniment recording. That's interesting, because you'll be able to then realise the difference between, oh, I just, went through the piece. But with the accompaniment recording, tempo, you will play as good as the recording soon. You will build your abilities on your review pieces. Once you can play a piece, you will build your ability with it. That is the Suzuki method. And there's a lot of other things. And right at the end, Suzuki says, so please look after yourself and goodbye.
Aww.
And I mean, it's just so touching to think that he did that.
Shall I photocopy that for everyone?
Yeah, okay, I've sort of made a mess by stuff. Yeah,
Do you have the email? I could probably print it just from the email.
I do actually.
Or just send it on to myself and then send it on to everyone.
I tell you what, why don't you have the whole thing
Okay.
with that clip? Yeah, that's exactly what we should do. So you understand that this is just my reading from Michiko's English translation from what he said, and she just snatched it from half an hour of talking. So what he says essentially is that you have to work hard. This is what he says. Work hard, you'll get better and better. Study every day, he says to him. If you receive something like that from your teacher, it's a big deal if you're 7. Study every day, not just playing it, but study the important points with the care. Then, keep your posture, keep your good tone. Please practice. So the first thing is all practice. And the second one is listen to the recording daily. Even if you can play the piece already, listen to the recording. He repeats it. Please listen to the recording. Then you will have a fine performance. You'll be as good as the performance. Listening to the recording will grow your musicality. Without noticing. So many people think you just have to listen to the recording until you think you know it. I have a moment, a sort of one interesting pupil who's at Leeds Conservatoire. It's my granddaughter who's taking an hour and a half every Monday, and she's learning repertoire, so she's doing Tchaikovsky at the moment actually. She's in her second.
Private lesson, do you mean? Sorry.
Yes,
What's
on
the hour
Zoom.
and a half? Okay, with you?
Yes,
Right.
every Monday. And she has obviously her lesson with her Russian teacher and chamber music and orchestra. I mean, she's just at a conservatoire, so you know what she does, basically. And I say to her, you've got to listen to this, because she definitely didn't do the Tchaikovsky with me. She didn't do, none of my students were playing the Tchaikovsky at that time, and didn't have that in her experience. And being a young lady of 17, 18, 19, whatever it was, she tended, I think, to listen more to Adele than to Suzuki or Ed Sheeran or whatever, She's just bloke, she does what you do, she'd just never been that person that just only wants to do classical music. So I knew that listening was really important. There's a hell of a lot of notes and she said, I've got on my playlist, it's number 3 on my playlist, and because every lesson I was, have you listened, and then I said last time, if you've actually listened enough, you won't actually have to memorize it, because you will have memorized it you've done your listening, right? You've got the music up there because you've got to check out, is it up bow, is it down bow, do I want to go in 3rd position or 5th position or what? Yeah. You know already what the notes are, so you don't have to work out the rhythm. You know already the expression and the feeling of the piece. Yeah? So in a way, bow division has been partly solved for you, and if you're a very good listener, some of the shifting's also been solved for you, because you can like actually, hear a subtle shift or down, or where it needs to, little dynamics are done for you, you've done so much. And again and again, I mean, this has happened since Christmas. I mean, every single week, I have to ask her to do more listening. Every week, literally, to January. So that's must have had about 8 lessons in which I've repeated it every time. And every time I say it, she comes up with, but I have done. You keep saying that, but I have listened, and what we really have to say, what are you listening for? What are you listening to? You have to be able to listen to it so that you can sing it back to. Oh no, I can. I find myself in the shower and I can, I'm singing all the time, but that's not enough just to be able to sing it. Yeah, can you sing it all the way through? And I have to keep showing her the Suzuki method works that way. That is what you do. You listen, you listen, you listen. And I think we know that little chap was not perfect Gossett Gavotte. We know that. I mean, there was a little C sharp could have definitely been more in tune and a bit scratchy a little bit, whatever. It wasn't completely steady, and you could say that, but it was delightful. And you have that feeling that he really knows it here. I mean, we are now really well trained to listen to that kind of music performance and analyze it, and we know. It's rather like something we were saying this morning, when you meet a 6-year-old who, for example, speaks French, and you hear the child speaking French, and then you meet a 6-year-old who actually is French. There's a difference. The one is speaking French with all parts of the head and brain firing. There's certain effort there, and there's figuring things out. There's some remembering there. There's some trying. There's some hoping there that goes on into the speech. Whereas a 6-year-old who actually is French is free of all of that and only needs to talk to you about the content, only needs to communicate the content of what he or she is saying. That's the difference. So you're not even aware that they are speaking French. It's just they're telling you something. Yeah. And it's that, 10,000 times training that we have to inspire in our children and in the parents of our children to understand what it is we're talking about. Because outwardly, as I say, but I do listen. And I have to say, when I was a mum of my children in New York, I was at the first school that they'd ever had outside Japan. Incredibly lucky. This is way back in the 60s before you were born. And I had, I thought really made a huge effort in listening. But I didn't actually know what I was really listening for my children, what they had to listen for. I just thought they had to learn the notes. Does my little boy know perpetual motion? Dum bum 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 bum. We sing it in the car sometimes, these songs, right? And I would say 10 out of 10 for mothering. Perfect. My kids know. They do, Kate. But they didn't. Because when it was taken slowly, dum bum bum bum, now what are you going to do? Can I go back to the beginning again? No, right now, where are you now? After I've stopped and talked to you about your little fingers sticking out like that and hoping this is round like that. How well do you know it? What's the next note? Bum, bum. We know it that well. They've got to be able to really, really know it that well. And it's just much, much, much more than you think. It was so much more than I thought. and I promised I had the best will in the world to do well. I wanted my children to do well. I really did. I mean, passionately. I mean, bordering on Tiger Mother. You know, I really wanted them to be superstars. And Tiger Mother, it's laughable now. I mean, it's like 10 minutes practice. But again, from my perspective, they were this size. And the violins were only pretend violins, which of course, that's my take on it. They weren't pretend violins, they were beautiful little Suzuki 16s violins and 10th size, you know. Actually, perfectly respectable pieces, works of art. I mean, they really do function extremely well. But from my tin ear point of view, hearing, I mean, looking at that little bow, it was sort of silly. I mean, you've all been there, so you don't even know what I'm talking about, because you've all seen little violins. But the sound, to me, was ridiculous, yeah? And ducka, 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 ducka. You know, who cared whether dum bum 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 ba da da da? Who cared? It was just a little twinkle. Well, you see, this is what I came up short and found. Oh my goodness, I've got to really, really get this sorted out. And the Japanese teacher told me what to do. She was faultless. She told me clearly and very expressively. And Akiko Takuba, my goodness, I remember her so well. I met her again 40 years later in Japan. I went over for an 80th birthday party of Miss Yuko Mori or something. Anyway, it was a big party they had. So I was invited. I went back, and so I saw this teacher who, you know, just really sweet. So she was blameless. She told me what to do. But what was missing, I suppose you might say, a little bit of empathy, maybe. Maybe she lacked empathy. What else possible thing you could say? There's a cultural difference, which she wasn't aware of. She'd just come out of Japan for the first time in her life, age 21, 2, something like that. Cultural differences, like I was in New York, Hoxton, same thing. You know, we take things casually. It's like the man who waved at us all, you know, I don't care. So, do you know, I'm not going to start calling 999 for that. You know, I lead my life on a more relaxed basis. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a cultural difference, maybe a language difference as well, although they'd had language lessons, they weren't that proficient. So what was missing was my respect was missing. I didn't respect her enough. You know, she was just telling me things and I was cherry picking, if you know the expression. I was thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting what you have to say. You know, I thought that bit that you said was really, that's profound. I'm going to write this down because this sounds really good. The next bit doesn't apply to me, so forget about it. And the next bit wishy-washy, or it's not quite, I haven't quite got it, so I went, oh, and now I found one other nice bit. You know, I would pick all the things that I liked from that teacher. And I'm saying it now, you know, I hope you can sense I'm saying it with humility, if I can say that's not exactly the right word, because, you know, I forgive myself because I didn't know any better. Now I do. So it's no good me flagellating myself thinking, why didn't I? You know, because actually the children all learned to play, and they all learned to play up to bar double. Two of them learned up to the end of the Mozart, and one of them went to do cello. And they all play now, they can all play. So, you know, all the Suzuki method absolutely worked for my children, and I'm teaching all their children, so that's another proof of the pudding, that they thought that it was sufficiently important part of their lives. They obviously thought it was effective as a lifelong method of learning. Otherwise, I mean, they're not that interested for the grandchildren to become violinists, but they are interested for them to have Suzuki lessons. It's quite important. important thing to understand the difference between the two. So you've got to realise you've got to show your parents what you mean by listening, and we've got to help them much more. We've got to be more physical about it, like where are you listening? You know, let's just go around the room, for example. How do you do your listening, Becca?
Normally sort of on my phone, on my headphones and
Okay,
things
so
when I'm taking a
you're
walk or
out
something.
taking a walk for 2 hours a day?
Not 2 hours a day.
That was put in just to, not to catch you out, but just to be literal about it. Okay, so I wouldn't say to a parent in that tone of voice 2 hours a day, but I would say, in a nice tone of voice, I would say, you know, good on you, if the children are doing that kind of listening. You know, how long would that be? How much time?
Probably about 20 minutes.
Yeah. You know, originally when he talked about listening, he said that they should listen for about the same amount to the violin music for about the same amount of time as they listen to their mother tongue. And that's quite an ask, isn't it? But you've got a 4-year-old. Has anybody else got, you had a 4-year-old. Has anybody else had a 4-year-old? You've had a 4-year-old. So 3, 4-year-old. So, you know, just thinking back until he was 4, how much English did she hear during the day?
It would be impossible unless you were putting the music on through school and all the time.
Yeah, you just have it on pretty well all the time.
No,
You're not
thank you.
actually-
Sorry, this is where I'm gonna. I just could not listen to book
See,
one on
that-
repeat all day, even
Well,
for the love
that's-
of my child. And I wouldn't
This is
ask
another
the
thing
families
that
to do it.
I had to look at, because I had, as you might imagine, so normal, a honeymoon period with it. You know, I really loved it. It was a record. And I just found it was totally exciting to think of my children learning those pieces and having the ability to get the notes, because they got the notes and they got the rhythm, certainly of the first, 8 pieces just like that, because you do with those folk songs. And then it wore out. I mean, it wore out by the time they got on something like Etude. I can't tell you that I felt like throwing up, but close sometimes. I would find any excuse to leave the room, and I didn't want to say that to the children. So on the whole, when I didn't want to listen anymore, they didn't listen anymore. Because I never discovered really why they had to do more than just get the notes. I didn't actually get it. So that if they go dum bum 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 dum bum 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 dum bum 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 dum bum bum dum bum dum, I say, well, that's fine. Can't you hear, Kate? Jacob can play Perpetual motion. Well, it's not actually Perpetual motion, really, is it? It's one of
Thank
the,
goodness it doesn't go like that.
it's one of the tricks I do with in sort of big play together sometimes in foreign countries, and I turn around to all the parents and I go, okay, what's this piece? And I go dum da 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 da, with a legato bowing and nice, and they can anybody just call out allegro? I go, no, listen more carefully. Yeah, da, da, da. It is allegro, isn't it allegro? Okay, everybody goes, I think it's allegro, I go, I'm not any allegro. Allegro goes like this, bum 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 bum. So you see, I was listening to the wrong wrong thing. Do you see what I mean? I wasn't really understanding that my own children have to absorb the tempo, for example. It never occurred to me. Nobody had ever said anything like that. So then I started having them play the violin over the recording, which was one way that I could bear to listen to some of these things again. Yeah. But I have to say, I'm going to check it out with you, Kate. You can tell me exactly the truth, but I went over that period. It was years, not weeks, it was years, and then I got out of it, and now I can actually understand what I'm listening for. So in my own case, if I've got something to learn new, I do it Suzuki method style, and I know that I've got to go right through, punch right through that low dip. Okay, and I'm happy about it now, because I'm listening for something different. Does this make any sense to you? I'm telling you this, not don't have to be faintly interested in what happened to my children or me, but I'm telling you because you're teachers and you've got that person, the parent sitting in front of you. So you've got to make it possible. How do you do your listening, Becca?
Prayer.
Freya?
Like with my breakfast, just speakers out loud every
Okay.
morning.
Yeah. Lovely. Crispy crackle. Yeah, you won't be able to hear your Kellogg's cornflakes. Okay, so who's with you at breakfast?
Normally alone.
Because that's another thing, is people say, well, the thing is everybody's in the room at the same time, and you say, but you can still listen. What about you?
Shower.
Shower.
Just me.
Big, long shower, short shower,
Well, I'm getting ready in the morning, so
and
putting makeup and whatnot.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to sing a bit of a swap, I think. I do it two ways.
Yeah.
One way is I have quite a lot of driving to do, and so I put it on, and I've been listening to it for like a 2.5 hour code journey.
That's
like
really
on there.
interesting. Yeah.
And then, but when I'm really trying to learn it for the bowings and stuff like that, I just put it on and sit there with my music and go through it with a pencil.
It's what I call active listening.
So I do it both ways. I mean, there's no doubt that on this 2.5 hour drive, basically to see my mum. When I was trying to learn and memorise this stuff, I thought, right, you're going to listen to it there and back. Oh, I'm going to do that. But I only managed it on the way there, and on the way back, I listened to the news and stuff.
Exactly.
But I had listened to it. I've listened to it a lot like that, and I sing along in the car as well. I sing with it in the car. I do it. It sounds like
I think singing is so
a
helpful.
weirdo.
The car's a really good place.
On your
It's
own,
a
yeah.
really good place.
It's
Even
quite,
if you've got
it
family
keeps self
of six.
company actually. It's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting. If I can't sing it, then I won't be able to memorize. I can't play it. I always
Well,
go
then you
wrong in the same place that I can't sing.
Exactly.
Always.
How about you?
It changed. I was at one point getting up and putting recordings on in the morning. Set the table, had recordings on, and then my son has kicked off at that and will not listen to Suzuki recordings in the morning. So he's got his own taste in music that he is very eclectic with, and is in the kind of 20th century, different styles from swing, jazz, rock, pop, whatever, to full-on rave music. But
How old?
it's 4.5. So I have my own little pockets of silence here and there to go off and listen. If I'm not on my bike, I'm on public transport, we'll probably go in different parts of the house, do different things.
Because earphones actually can be quite dangerous if you're driving on a bike
Mm.
and on a bike.
Yeah, I
and
don't
on
know, never
bicycle.
like.
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
don't like
know.
earphones.
I think it is difficult. I asked one person, Bex, I asked you how long, but just to find out the physicality of it, I think is helpful as a teacher for you to find out, what they actually do. Do they listen to it on their computer? My son Jacob, he's just been staying with me, and he from Vietnam. He's got 2 children that I teach online. They were in Vietnam, and he's got it. I don't know how. I haven't thought about doing it for myself, but I might. As soon as you open the computer, it's got the Suzuki music in it.
It plays automatically when you open it.
Mm.
I don't know. I wouldn't
Used to
do that.
actually, that sort of stuff.
Anyway,
It used to be easy to do back with Windows 95.
it
but
wasn't
I
his
can't do
own
it now.
computer, so he couldn't demonstrate. His own computer's like this one, so it was just the same. But the one he has in Vietnam. So the children are 9 and 11, and they just each have their music as soon as they have the computer on. It's all automatically on iTunes. But that's just one way. You have to be creative. You've got to be helpful. You've got to be sensitive. You can't sort of I would never do. Never in the shower. Just go to where they are and be grateful for it. And this is the time when you might find out from one of your parents actually, like either it's doing my head in, or, which is quite common, or he doesn't want to listen anymore. He's in book 2 or something, or book 3 or 4, and he says he doesn't want to listen to. And that's something that, again, you've got to take quite delicately, really, sensitively. Because, I think there is a discipline there, but children in this country anyway like to know, so why should I is the question that they're asking, and parents are saying, why should I? So now I'm going to ask you all, Kate, I'm excluding you on purpose, by the way. I'm asking you all to think for a moment of what would be something. I've come to a lesson with you, and I'm 4, and there's something about what I'm doing, what I'm playing, that makes you suspicious that I'm not listening enough. I'm a very, very dutiful little girl, and I put my violin up perfectly, and I've made a perfect bow hold. So I'll go around the room the other way around. What would you notice as a teacher? The absence of listening, of enough listening. What would you look for?
Pulse and rhythm being married together.
Good, lovely answer. Pulse and rhythm. So just sing some of my inadequate Twinkle then.
That you've.
I'm 4. I've come for my lesson with you. So
Okay.
just sing me a May song or Allegro, something in the early pieces of book 1 that are demonstrating.
Thank you for clearing my throat.
Oh, just
Yeah.
do it with a do. I'm not fussy about what you sound like.
Once I saw a crocodile who snapped at all he saw.
Yeah, okay, so definitely unsteady, isn't it? And yet, I'm 4, and my mother's looking after me. Kate's my mum, and we're thinking, good on you, got all those notes. Clever little girl, you're thinking. And I'm thinking, he's going to be so pleased because he knows. So rather than say, you're unsteady, which would be a quick fix, sometimes we need quick fixes every now and again. You can say, out of tune, or unsteady, but we're Suzuki teachers, so we try and reframe it. How are you going to help Kate, by the way? She's the mother. How are you going to tell her?
I would tell the mother. I would
Tell me or
I'll
tell the
you.
mother?
I mean, first of all, put the violin down, maybe clap the rhythm out the tempo, play along with it, so we know that there aren't pauses there, thought of in the rhythm is done in the correct way. So it's not the thought process is a bow movement or anything else, which is just slowing down thought from head to physicality. Just getting can we clap that together? Can we get it nice and even?
Even.
Yeah.
That's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, I know age 4 at some level that I'm hesitating. I don't know the words you use, but it's something like once I saw a crocodile, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never used the word, but it doesn't matter. I can tell at 4 that once I saw a crocodile is different from once I saw a crocodile. I'm not stupid, so I know there's a difference. So it's not that I've got bad rhythm, is it? It's, you see, we've got to see what the real error is, what we as teachers can really change, not short-term fix. I mean, that is one of the signals. It's a signal to you, yeah, that there's not enough listening. Let's go on a bit. Anything?
A signal is not enough listening.
Yes. Any kind of signal.
I would say a lot of wrong notes or
Yeah,
sort of poor
fun.
tuning without
Yeah.
being
Okay.
disturbed by it.
Wrong notes.
Yeah.
Wrong notes without embarrassment.
Yeah, because sort of like, you know, if they're playing very badly out of tune, then as I said,
Okay, that's another one.
upset them.
Okay, we've got a lot of things here because we've already had 2. One was the pulse was unsteady, and one was the rhythm unsteady. That's 2 different things, by the way, 2 totally different things. We've now got 2 more totally different things, right? One is intonation, got to be, and well, the first one you said, which is notes. So these are signals to you. If the child is playing a wrong note, it's a signal. Don't try and correct the note. It's telling you something. Anything else? I'm more or less done, but
If they've slightly changed it to make it sound
okay.
to what they expect,
Yeah.
so
okay.
like instead of ending on a C sharp, the end on an A, that they resolve the phrase down because it sounds like that's where it should go.
Okay. Lovely.
Like you
Good.
mistake on
Yeah. Okay.
And they're not clear on the structure.
And lots and lots of little memory slips, like in Twinkle. How many times have you heard the middle section, which we sometimes call cheese? You know, bread, cheese, bread, sandwich. Have you heard that played once instead of twice? And parents are very happy with that. It's as if they don't notice, as if they're suddenly become deaf. Da 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 ya da ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 bum ba da da da. Big smile on everybody's face. Just not enough listening. Just not enough listening. No point in saying we're just going to have a real conversation now about this sandwich and there's 2 bits of cheese in it. And I'm 4 and I'm listening and I'm going nodding off. I don't actually know how you're talking about.
If they're missing out repeats and that
Missing
sort
out
of thing.
repeat. Classic. Exactly. Oops, yeah, forgot the repeat. No, oops, forgot to listen. There's another one that I was going to add to you, but I mean, we've pretty well covered them. There must be lots and lots of other ones, but I'm just thinking of book 1, really. But, da 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 bum ba 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 bum 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 bum. You know, it's almost stressful for me to sing it like that because it's doesn't fit into my inner ear. My inner ear is bursting with a good Matsumoto tempo, So now we're just going to do a little bit of hands-on. Everybody put their hands together. And you're going to go to your shower or your breakfast room or your car, wherever, and you're going to turn on the tape, and it's going to be Twinkle, right? I'm not going to give you any clue about the tempo. In fact, I won't do it, because otherwise you might look and think, oh, she's going to do the right tempo. But what's the tempo of Twinkle? So I'll just say the word go, and then off you go.
On variation A.
Your variation A, but you don't have to do not this. You just the pulse. Okay? Okay? Are you ready, everybody? Go!
Do you want me to play the real bit?
Yes. Brilliant. So you absolutely all know the tempo. That's called, in our world, matsumoto tempo. Just means the tempo on the CD. And don't be waylaid at this stage in your life. People will say, oh, different CDs do different things. They don't that much. Hilary Hahn's pretty well the same as Suzuki, and Suzuki's pretty well the same as David Cerrone and so on. I mean, of course, some people have made an error and made slow recordings. That is a Suzuki philosophical error, because children don't think slowly, they think quickly in short, sharp bursts. So this is helps them remember it. But da 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 is quite unmemorable for a 4-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, whatever. So your inner ear propels you, right? So that it gets onto this bee in my bonnet about Suzuki method being self-correcting. You know, once you've listened enough, it's quite extraordinary how things like the repeats, things like the intonation, things like the pulse,
And the tone.
and the
You said the
tone,
tone.
just disappears as a problem. And the tone, huge. The only reason I didn't mention the tone is sometimes the recording is, you know, not a good I mean, you know, I don't know how well you hear out of that really, but you know.
I mean,
tone.
these are like, even that is much better than what I grew up with of a tape recorder, isn't it? Like the quality that comes out of even a really crappy phone
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
it's like much better than an LP.
Yes, absolutely.
Much better than what
It
Dr.
truly
Suzuki
is.
had available for his students.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of clarity of sound.
And you
Yeah.
can,
Style.
and you can tell that from Michiko's brother.
Mm.
You know, you can hear it. You know, there's lots of crackling. But listening is not actually the subject of my talk so much as what are the signals of not enough listening and how are you going to handle it. Because in the old days, as I told you, with a Japanese teacher, the Japanese teacher told me what to do. This is what you have to do. You know, I'm your teacher and I'm telling you, you've got a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever. My children were 3, 4 and 5 at the time. This is what you have to do. See, but I didn't do it. See, why didn't I do it? There's a gap. There was a gap, a misunderstanding, a cultural gap. And it exists right here in Hoxton. It exists everywhere. What happens to your teaching? You've told them what to do, and it's like a gift you give them, and then they just right out there, they've dropped it. They've dropped that gift.
That's such a good analogy.
Smashed. You know, because you didn't show how unnecessary it was, how precious, and what you're looking for. You've got to say it not once, you've got to say it in every single lesson, even to somebody who's your own granddaughter who's leads conservatoire. I've got to say it all the time. Can you understand me? That, you know, the two little grace notes. It was a dililiam pa-da-dum, and she was going dililiam-da-da-dum. You know, can you see? Can you hear? You know, how is it really in your head? Are you really listening to those two little grace? You know, so what are you listening for is really important. And any way you can help. Kate knows this, I have a lot of sort of flyers, no, what are they called? Sort of loose pieces of paper that I hand out. I mean, rather like what I did actually just now, that handout on humanity. I mean, it's not the subject of this conversation, but, you know, it's just, I love Kate, we've got a connection. So, you know, I think that it sort of fits. So handouts, I'm a great believer in that. But you know what I've discovered, even because I'm always moving on, can I just, you know, all right, so Freya's the mother now, and she's dutifully brought her book, yeah, and she's just had a lecture all about the importance of listening, and so, you know, here I might just take her book, you know, and there's many things I could do, but one, I might just do something in nice lettering. Listen more, with a big heart or a smiley face or something. You know, just, it's in, there we are, sort of in your face, taking them, or, you know, I want you to you're a little boy and you need to see if you can keep your tummy still and strong, and or something. So, you know, I might say, tools drawn tummy or something like that. I mean, it sounds banal, but, and then it's always very, very short bits of information. You don't start, you know, writing a discourse. But there's something about going into where they are and, you know, doing it that way that I find it works better. So there's also, you can have a listening chart. I've done that in the old days, you know. I would give them I think Kate's day actually had a listening chart, you know, but, okay, that's another thing. Parents might do it dutifully. They might have a little sort of rush with listening, you know, and I put maybe, you know, that's a week, and you have to 7 of those, and then, you know, so that's listening for the next 10 weeks. But these things, sometimes a bit idealistic, you know, like, they're not gonna do it. Much better, again, this I do quite a lot. I might just take your page like that and divide it into 7 or something, 6 or something, one, you know, and each one of them they've got to listen to book 1 or something, you know, just something that I think is absolutely for that moment, for that child. I mean, if that child's going from 0 listening, you know, they've just really forgotten around etude, then that might be a practical way. I could just grab that book and do it that way. But the more you get that through to parents, the easier it is. The violin playing should be easy if it's a question of notes, rhythm, pulse, intonation, all the things that part should be easy, really easy. Suzuki said that to me many, many times. He had to repeat himself so often with me because I never got it. Violin playing is very easy. Violin playing is very easy. Suzuki method's very easy. He says it over and over and over again. And I just heard the words, they went in here, they came straight out here. I knew he said them, but I didn't actually get it. Why does he keep telling me? It's as if he spent more time telling me that violin playing was easy than other people. I mean, I started to notice that I was sort of, I was going to say picked on, but you know, you can't say that with Suzuki, but I noticed that he said it to me very often. And that's 'cause, you know, I didn't listen enough, I hadn't had enough 10,000 times training. You know, I wasn't the 6-year-old that was French. You know, I was the 6-year-old that spoke French. Just when I went first, I mean, you see what I mean? I mean, I didn't have a Suzuki background in that sense of being a child. I was a parent, so I knew the songs and that kind of thing. But just to be really free, you know, there's something magical about it from his point of view. So always, you can write that down right now, all of you. You're accepted. When I say all, I don't mean you, Kate, but just write down violin playing is easy. And underneath that, write Suzuki method is easy. And if you were to find one word that summarizes Suzuki method, I mean the technical side of it, I think the word would be listening. Yeah? I mean, love comes to mind, music comes to mind, but I'm talking about a, you know, practical word that describes the method. It's listening. I know it's also repetition, and he says that in this, you must repeat. Kate, tell me about the timing of this.
It's lunchtime.
And it is now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
That's it. If you're done, that's it.
Yes, I'm never done.
I mean, yeah. You're not planned to stop
if
now.
you're done.
This would
Anyway.
seem like a good thing. But Mimi, do you want to share what you told us in the session this morning about Dorothy DeLay? It's a very good quote for this moment.
Yeah, I read in a book about her that she said when somebody said, "This is very this is so difficult," and she said, "No, honey, it's not difficult. It's just time consuming."
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and that sort of sums up Suzuki, doesn't it? It's
my
like,
God, I love it. I've read the book.
It's not difficult,
Didn't
it's,
even remember that.
it's time consuming. And it is.
Yeah.
You can do it, it's time consuming, but yeah.
Yeah, it's time consuming. You know, it's really so amazing though, seeing people that have been through it and how they can apply it in their lives. And I've just been so thrilled to see it being applied by my children in their lives. I mean, Kate has the extraordinary experience of actually, you know, Rick's doing it and you're doing it. I went the other day to the Maguires. Do you remember Bobby Maguire? Do you remember the Maguires? Anyway, they've got 3 children who are all professional musicians. Lucy Maguire's doing nuclear.
Oh yes, no, I know Lucy, yeah.
Okay, and Jack Maguire is also teaching violin at nuclear, and the eldest one is in a band with Arlo Guthrie's grandson. I mean, you know, what is not to like about that? Arlo Guthrie's grandson plays guitar at a little band, and it's really successful. Anyway, those things just, you know, mean a lot to me when I see how people have sort of come up and moved off, and then they're able to use the skills, they can transfer them into other things. I mean, it's really true. You do become more gifted as a person with this, with your memory development, for example. Yeah. Develops your memory. So many people in life say they don't have a good memory. Suzuki teachers used to say that. Used to be a big deal. I don't know if it was in your day when you were doing sort of level 4, for example. Were they saying things like, "Oh my God, I'll never be able to remember it"? Well, perhaps not.
Yes, they were.
They were.
That's why I won't start anyone on a level until they know all the music, in theory.
And
Because you don't need to
These
pay
guys
a
knew the
teacher trainer
music.
to help you learn Suzuki pieces. Learn them by yourself for free, and you come and learn how to teach them and how to play them. You know. Yeah.
it's a terrible waste, and that's what I learned. I'm afraid when I went to Branston, I'm very critical about that, so perhaps shouldn't talk about it.
Should I just stop the recording?
Yes, I stopped it. But Kate, of course.